Hello YouTube, this is me, Mata Jinka. Sorry I hit my camera there. And I'm back with another video. And this is a walk and talk video. This time it's been a while since I've made one of these. The truth is, the last little while I've been job hunting and I've been having other videos to make about my trip to Toronto, and I've had a lot going on, and there have been some subjects that I've thought about making one of my usual walk and talk videos about. Honestly, I just haven't really been into it, and things are okay. Don't get me wrong, things are fine. So today is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, May 17th. Coincidentally, May 17th, today, is also 11 years to the day since I had my own gender reassignment surgery. Kind of ironic that I had my surgery on the International Day Against Homophobia, etc., etc. And in fact, this isn't really a day that I've been observing that much. And apparently it's been around, ever since about 2004. But I must say that I wasn't really aware of its existence, basically until this year. So, now, my subject, because it is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, the topic of my video today is, gender. And before I get into a conversation about gender, I would like, to get something dealt with right out in the open just before we even begin. And that is, I do not for a minute think that we live in a world that is devoid of homophobia, transphobia, and hatred and bigotry and violence based on those two things. Most definitely is. And I think that homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia, and racism, and sexism, and hate in generally, I really think that the world would be a much better place without any of those. It's almost like I don't really need to say this, but I'm pretty sure that there are people who, especially of the more social justice-y nature, who are going to watch this video and condemn me for being a bigot and transphobic, which is ridiculous, of course, since I don't have any internalized transphobia, but I'm pretty sure they're going to accuse me of that anyway. And I really would suggest that, if you're going to criticize the video, maybe you're based on the topic that I'm going to talk about, maybe you shouldn't watch the video. But the fact that you might not like it doesn't mean in any way that I'm going to stop making the videos that I'm making. So yeah, but like I said, it's almost like I don't really need to have said that. But the YouTube, the internet being what it is, I probably kind of did have to say it. So anyway, now that we put that aside, we're going to talk about gender. And we're going to talk about gender in the context of social justice warriors. Now, what is gender? Now, the definition of gender is, actually not as straightforward as you might think. The problem is when the social justice warriors start defining gender, they don't really do a very good job of it. And in fact, they don't even really try to define what they mean when they use the term gender. That means that when they talk about gender, they talk about it as if it's some kind of nebulous, vague thing. I think, and this might be conspiratorial, God, I can't say that word. I think it might be a little bit of a conspiracy, but I think that they leave the word undefined because then they can make it mean whatever it is they want it to mean, when someone calls them on it. Now, what do we mean when we talk about gender? Well, this is only my view. There are three things to consider when we're talking about gender. The first of these is gender identity. The second of these is gender roles within society. And the third of these is gender expression. Now, like I said, when the social justice warriors talk about gender, they do not really define what it is they mean by gender. Which means that, when you criticize them, they can, make it mean whatever they want it to mean. Now, the second two of those categories, gender roles and gender expression, these really aren't the topic that I talk about when I talk about gender. Now, it is true that both gender roles and gender expression have, they have varied cross-culturally over time. Sometimes different cultures have thought differently about the roles that men and women have. Differences in how gender is expressed. Those things are cultural. Those things are, they do vary. Gender identity, however, is unlike the other two. Gender identity has not varied cross-culturally. Gender identity is very much biological. Gender identity is hardwired into your brain, and it's something that you cannot change. And there are two genders, despite what the social justice warriors will tell you. But their lack of definition, I think, really muddies the water. Because their definition is so vague, and because they don't really say what it is they're talking about when they talk about gender. But it is clear that when they come out with the idea that gender is a societal construct, they are really drawing on the variation that has existed cross-culturally in terms of gender roles and in terms of gender identity. Gender expression. Gender identity, they seem to believe similarly to the other two, because they don't make a differentiation, is also something that is varied. Well, they are wrong. Gender, like I said, is hardwired, and there's two genders, just as there are two biological sexes. Now, what does this have to do with the fact that today is the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia? Well, the answer is really simple. Because the SJW definition of gender is so wide, the definition of what a transgendered person has become really, really wide, to the extent that I honestly believe the vast majority of people who are calling themselves trans are not trans. When I came out of the closet, there was a very strict distinction between gender roles and gender expression and gender identity. We transitioned not because we thought we were changing gender. We transitioned because gender identity, our gender identity as members of the opposite sex, is hardwired into the brain, and the body, well, at least in my case, the body didn't match that perception of myself. My gender identity is not something I therefore chose. What I chose to do was to do something about it, because the incongruity between my mind and my body was causing me a lot of, social and, personal issues, mental health issues, and so forth. And since to date there is no psychological cure for, gender dysphoria, that is to say a discomfort between, an incongruity between your body and your mind, surgery really was the only option left to us. And to get that surgery was actually really, really quite hard. It wasn't surgery on demand. It used to be at one time, and then people, would change their minds afterwards and sue the doctors. Of course, the doctors then wanted to make sure that, they didn't get sued. And so the Harry Benjamin Institute, named after a doctor called Dr. Harry Benjamin, came up with a set of standards of care for trans people. First thing they didn't want was to be sued, and the second thing they didn't want was someone to go through surgery and then regret it later, which has caused severe mental issues as a result. It was not on demand. And surgery like this, I really believe that surgery like this should not be given on demand. This kind of surgery is a huge issue. This is a big decision that is irreversible. You can't change it. And people who have had the surgery and regret it are a burden to the mental health system and the healthcare system. I truly believe that. But during the process of, assessments and consultations and psychiatrist visits, psychologist visits, you get to learn quite a bit about yourself. And I had surgery, and I have not regretted it to this day. But I am also under no illusion that I changed my gender. I didn't change my gender. I changed my body to approximate a female body. It is not a female body. My chromosomes are still XY. I'm still male, biologically, in terms of chromosomes. My parts, if you like, now I feel a little bit awkward. My parts, if you like, from the outside anyway, are a reasonable facsimile. But they're not real. Because you can't change your gender, and you can't change your biological sex either. And that's the reality of, being a transsexual. And actually, I prefer the term transsexual to transgender, because transgender was a political term, and it has since been taken over by the social justice crowd and the campus third-wave feminists, right? Like I said, as a political word, and I kind of want to take back the word transsexual. That's the reality of the situation. You cannot change your gender, and you cannot choose your gender, and there aren't multiple genders. I think one of the biggest and most harmful things that third wave feminism has brought to the trans community is this idea that, based upon gender roles and gender expression having varied cross-culturally, is this idea that gender, this ill-defined term gender, is therefore a social construct. This is, of course, based on a poor understanding of society and culture and biology. This is based upon postmodernist crap where everything is a matter of interpretation without any effort of backing up any kind of opinions with any kind of empirical data. It's almost like they think that empirical data is somewhat patriarchal, which of course is nonsense. And that's the biggest harm that they've brought to the trans community, is this idea that gender now is something that you can choose. This has come to all kinds of people coming out of the closet saying, you know what, I'm a transgender person, you have to respect me. Well, I think that if gender is something that you say you choose, and that one day you identify as a man, and the next day you identify as a woman, and the day after that you identify as maybe something in between, then I really doubt the veracity of your statement that you are a transgender person. If gender was something you could choose, then there would be no point in transitioning. Which means that there would be no point to gender reassignment surgery. And this is a view too, I think, that has effectively silenced those of us who, of my generation, who built the trans community, by the way. This has kind of silenced us, and I've talked about this in other videos, and it's kind of pushed us out of our own communities and silenced our voices. And as a result of that, people of course are doubting their words when they say, I'm a transgender person, you have to respect that. And by trying to label everyone who disagrees with them as bigots, by trying to destroy their lives, ruin their careers, and all kinds of other stuff like that. And I think that kind of attitude, all, by the way, while preaching about diversity and inclusion, but not actually practicing what they preach, because they don't include those of us whose opinion is different. Of course, the result of this hypocrisy has been a pushback that I've noticed that is happening now against the idea of transgender people, transsexuals, or whatever you happen to want to call them. In the mid-2000s, when we were still fighting for equal protections and societal acceptance, without the help of feminists, by the way, things were starting to get better for us in terms of societal acceptance. But I've noticed that in the last little while that the amount of social acceptance for us has decreased, and it has decreased, I think, due to the intolerant, hypocritical behavior of SJWs who do not practice what they preach, who do not tolerate different opinions, who will try and destroy your life by labeling you a bigot. And we as a society, we go along with this because, of course, we're afraid of being labeled a bigot, or racist, or homophobe, or whatever else. And things have gotten to such a pass that there's a pushback happening. And that pushback, by making this video, I am part of this pushback. I am not part of this pushback because I think that transgender people do not exist, that it's just a mental illness, and that we should necessarily be accepted just because we say so. We should be accepted on our merits and based upon the evidence. I am pushing back because this idea of gender as a choice driving a pushback is of personal importance to me, because it's going to make the lives of people like me who are moderate, who had the surgery, who just want to be left alone, much, much harder. And so I think it's important that people like myself who are trans come out and say to the SJWs, to the social justice warriors, no, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And you should really shut the fuck up. Quit making my life harder. Quit making it more difficult for people like myself just to live. So, that's my views on gender. Gender identity is not a choice. The gender binary does exist. And gender is not this fluid thing that you can choose based upon preferences, based upon some amorphous and vague definition that seems to be based on postmodern bullshit from gender studies departments, which, by the way, should be defunded in my opinion. And you guys should really get with the program. If you don't suffer from gender dysphoria and you're saying you're going to be identifying as a female today, you're not trans. I'm trans, you're not. You can say, I am tired of identifying as a male and I'm going to wear a dress from now on. That doesn't make you trans, that makes you a cross-dresser, and you're not trans. I am convinced that the number of trans people in the world is actually a very, very tiny percentage of the population at large. Which means that the majority of people, young people, misguided people out of high school who have bought into this social justice bullshit, the majority are not trans at all. You're not. You know what? And the fact that you keep harping on about this shit invalidates my life experience. It invalidates the experiences of those of us who suffered physical violence and threats of death and actual murder to just be who we are, to live our lives. So, anyway, that's really all I got today. I thought this was a video that's important to make, and I think this is a subject that is important to talk about. But I thought it was particularly important to talk about this topic on this day, which is, like I said, the International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. And I wanted to make this video on this day to make it very clear that there are a lot of mistaken beliefs about transgender people that need to be cleared up. And I really wish the stupid motherfucking social justice warriors would just fuck the hell off and leave us out of their shit. I don't usually swear in videos, and I don't usually name call, but this is a touchy subject for me, and so, yeah. Anyway, I am Mata Gaijinka. Wherever you are in the world, have a great day, have a great night, have a great morning, have a great afternoon, and I hope you take care of yourself, and I will talk to you all later. Bye for now.